Hello, everyone. I see that there are people joining, and we're going to give it just a minute for everyone to join. But while we're waiting, please feel free to put where you're from and your name in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. All right. Adam and Mark, are you seeing everything okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. We'll give it just a second. I know people take a minute to join. So. No, I just lost my screen. Hold on just a moment. Okay. All right, if you're just joining, please feel free to put your name and where you're from in the chat. I only see 2 so far. Let's try this again.
Mark, do you live in Salt Lake? Like in the city proper, or you live?
I live in West Valley, so it's really close to downtown Salt Lake. Like I'm 10 minutes away.
Oh, nice.
10 minutes to the airport, 10 minutes to downtown. So I like to sort of say it's pretty much Salt Lake City where I'm at.
All right. We'll give it a minute or two, but there might be a technical issue. We were seeing it just fine, but I don't see any joiners, which is weird. Are you seeing the same, Adam?
I can't see where in the chat. I'm not seeing any chats.
Oh, there's one. Okay. I think folks are just coming on. Hi, Kate. We'll give it just a moment. I think we've just got people coming aboard. All righty. We'll give it just one more minute and then we'll go ahead and get started. And for the folks that join later, they can catch up. We'll just have a good old conversation. How about that?
Sounds good.
Sounds great.
Perfect. All righty. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. Let me move this over really quickly here. Okay, for those of you just joining, please feel free to put your name and location in the chat. We're going to go ahead and get started and certainly want this to be as interactive as possible. So hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us at the second annual session of Performance in Real Life. This is Klaar's monthly webinar series focused on performance management and how it actually is evolving inside organizations. Today's topic is one I think every HR leader and manager can relate to. Most managers genuinely care about their people, but somewhere along the way, many were taught that caring and accountability sit on the opposite sides of the spectrum, which we all know isn't true. So when performance issues arise, managers often swing too far one way, and that's, very common. They like to avoid difficult conversations entirely and focus heavily on results, which can really erode trust. And we're going to dive into that a little bit today. So the reality is that high performance cultures require both. And we have some folks here today that are very attuned and can talk about that at great length. And while most organizations agree that in theory, delivering both consistency as much in practice is as important as it is in function, managers are expected to coach, to document, to recognize, to course correct, and make fair performance decisions. And often they do this with limited information or incomplete information. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Again, if you're just joining us, please put your name in the chat and where you're from. We want this to be as interactive as possible. For those of you I haven't met, I'm Lana Peters. I'm the Chief Revenue and Customer Experience Officer at Klaar, and I'll be moderating today's conversations. I'm thrilled to be joined by two incredible guests, both of which I hold dear to my heart. Adam Weber, who is an executive coach and author of Lead Like a Human, and Mark Schaerrer, who is a VP of HR at Verisys Corporation. So before we jump in today, I'd love for each of the panelists to give a quick introduction, a little bit about their background. Adam, you want to get started?
Sure. Thanks, Lana. Well, I'm Adam Weber. I'm an executive coach. I was a founder of two tech companies in the culture and employee engagement space. In real time, I coach senior leadership teams and CEOs on how to build these high performance yet high care cultures and lead from a human-centered perspective. And outside of work, I'm a dad. I got two boys, and I love playing competitive pickleball. It is one of my life hobbies and passions, and I take so much of my time. So if you're a pickleball fan, feel free to shoot me a LinkedIn message. We can talk about levels and paddles and all the things.
Perfect.
That sounds amazing.
Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Mark Schaerrer. I'm the VP of HR over at Verisys Corporation. Been in the HR space for about 22, 23 years. Worked as a recruiter, corporate recruiter, HR1, leading now with Verisys over all their people operations as a company. Have a master's degree in human resources from Utah State University. And outside of work, I love going up into the mountains. I'm not a pickleball player, but I like going up and hiking and trail running and just climbing mountains and getting outside in nature as much as I can when I'm not working. But my day job is I oversee all the people operations here at Verisys and try to make a better human experience at work.
Love that. Love that. Well, welcome both of you. I know we've spent a lot of time together and you have such valuable insights. We're so thankful you're here today. So before we dive in, just some quick housekeeping items. We'd love to keep this as interactive as possible. So please use the chat during the session. If you have any questions, you can also raise your hand. Depending on how many of us there are, you can also interject. We'll take that as we go. But we also are sharing a few polls to be sure that everyone participates and can get their opinions out. So just know those will pop up and please feel free to submit your answers to those as we go along. So let's start with our first poll. Let's see if this actually lets me submit it. I was saying earlier we were having some technical issues on this. All right. First poll. What is the hardest performance conversation for managers on your team today? Just real quick. Okay, we'll let everybody sink in on that one for just a moment. Giving tough feedback. I know there's not a lot of people on here that are doing the poll quite yet. That's okay. All right. So what are your thoughts in the early, what you're seeing here? Is that a surprise to you, Adam, Mark? What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think these really get at the heart of the topic today in general. So I think giving tough feedback is always hard. And especially if you view a manager's role as like the learned skill of management, and they have all these expectations that they are constantly like not met. And then a lot of times what happens is they end up building resentment. And so when you look at these top three, that tells a story, like giving tough feedback, addressing underperformance. Those two to me often are right beside each other. And having the courage to care about someone enough to tell them how they're not meeting your expectations and to give them a path on how to like get out of it. And then of course that like terminations and exits being the other one is not super surprising, because when you don't do those first two, like that's how the story ends. And it's not fun. Yeah. To do exit conversations when you haven't done the other two. It's never fun to do exit conversations, but they're very different when they're done all throughout. Like, this is what the role needs. This is what growth looks like. This is what the bar is for you. And we're both trying to see if this role's a fit for you. And like, if we can set clarity around that, it takes a lot of the pressure that happens off of those termination and exit conversations, as they're just a next step in a logical transition for that person.
Right. I always say when someone's surprised, there's a problem, but when they're not,
Yeah.
it's understood. So yes. Mark, anything to add to that?
I think Adam and you hit it pretty well in there. I think that when somebody goes, well, what? I didn't see this coming. Like I think that's where we avoid the tough conversations because we want to be nice. But being nice can also have a negative effect as well when the person doesn't get the feedback and the manager's like, hey, yeah, I need you to do this, but they're not really telling the story of what needs to happen, but it's really subtle. And they're like, oh yeah, I told them about it. I even wrote it out in there. And you're like, can I see that? And I'm like, nowhere does it say anything about this whatsoever. Like, please point it out. And sometimes we think in our head that we've given the message to the person and said, hey, what's happening, or of wanting to avoid that tough conversation, and it can lead to more underperformance, or that worst case, a termination where somebody's surprised. And it all starts with how you engage in performance.
Mark, real quick on that too. Like, this was years ago, but I ran this large scale study on employees and managers where I surveyed 1,000 managers and 1,000 employees on their experience. And the biggest form of disconnect between the two of them was how often a manager thought they gave feedback, so they thought they were doing that, versus how often the employee felt like they received it. And which is just like kind of a tale as old as time. But it's like, I think because people are so gentle with their language and they only use one medium to communicate, like, you have to be far more direct, and you always have to use two mediums as well. Like for example, I always would say, in a meeting with a direct, I want to share what that feedback is, and then I want to follow it up with a Slack and just say, hey, thanks so much for being willing to hear it. As I mentioned, this is the topic this is the big theme that we're going to be focused on for your development right now. So there's no way to miss this feedback. Like, they deserve to hear where they really stand.
I think that's good.
Exactly. And then you can also get the feedback from them where it's like, that's not what I heard. And then you can address it in faster time for it, so that you can address the performance quicker than have it become a bigger problem down the road. Like, it's a great approach of, I'm verbally going to tell you, and then write it down and confirm it and say, is this what you're understanding as well?
And I think one of the things I gloved onto Adam there is that they deserve the feedback. Sometimes feedback is perceived as negative, and it's not. Feedback is how we grow and learn, all of us. So I think deserving that is a positive way to look at that. Let's jump into our first topic. So why care and accountability often feel at odds, and they often do. So for both of you, and either one of you could answer first, why do you think so many managers feel like they have to choose between being supportive and holding their people accountable? And as AI becomes more embedded in the workplace, does that tension get easier, or do you think it gets harder to manage?
I think that a lot of managers, like, it comes down to tough conversations. In school, like, you really don't get a class on interpersonal communications unless you're working in a comms degree. They don't teach you in management how to have a really kind conversation, but hey, you still got to get this one done. I think about it with parenting with my kids. I'm like, hey, I need to it's summertime. When I have kids at home, I'm like, hey, we have chores to do. This is what needs to get done. I don't care when it gets done. It needs to be, other than it needs to get done by the end of the day. And then I'll follow up with them and let them know about it. But if there's not, there's some consequences. But maybe they're not playing on the iPad. I know it doesn't work like taking away the electronics. But the thing is that we're so accustomed to just saying we want to be nice, or on the opposite side that we're just black and white, and that's how it is. And I'm not going to look over here and want to build up a relationship or have that empathy towards a person. And I think that with AI being embedded into workplaces, there are ways that you can make it easier so you can actually focus on the person and have things like tools that can help you gauge performance and also document things. But I really think that a lot of us, just in general life, we either want to be kind, or we're just black and white, and we don't want to. We want to remove the emotions, but we're people. We're full of emotions, and we're complex. And I think it takes a lot of character to gauge each individual person.
Very well said.
Yeah, I think, we also live in this culture. We do live in a culture of extremes. And so I think some of the tension comes from we think that the answer is we have to pick sides, right? Like, and so if we're these high care, go so far over into high care. But when you're so far into high care, you get into things like ruinous empathy and toxic positivity, and everybody's a family. But there's something that's disingenuous about that side. While as noble as it sounds, that moment where the business mechanics don't work and you have to lay off 20% of the people, you've created a really uncomfortable environment. And then the other side, right? You skew too far to the other side of performance and it's cutthroat. Everyone's in it for themselves. There's no genuine relationships that are happening there. Everything is like, it kind of has this very like tactical component to it. There's no life and vibrancy to it. And so the temptation is one of these you're naturally good at in general. And the temptation is to lean further into the thing you're good at. And my challenge for people is always like, how do we find that middle? How do we, wherever you are on that continuum, how do we push you toward the middle? Because I am convinced that that is where the teams that are great live. They live in that balance where they go, we actually care about you enough to be honest with you. We create cultures that we're proud of, aspirational cultures, but it's not the detriment of holding a high bar for people. It's not the detriment of investing in developing people and expecting great things out of them. Like those two things aren't at odds. It's just that they live in this balance. And all of us, I've skewed both ways. I started my career way too far high care, and then I skewed way too far to high performance. And a lot of my own growth was just kind of finding in that middle ground as well.
You and I have had the same journey, exactly. But
Yeah.
it takes time to really understand where you are and how to get to the middle. But I do think that's the sweet spot. So Adam, you talk a lot about leading with humanity. Where do leaders sometimes misunderstand what that actually means?
I think they think it means that I think too often people think that sharing hard things is absent of humanity.
Mhm.
And the reason why is because I think too often people wait too long. Like a metaphor I like is like uh, a corrective feedback is like a little cat paw. It's gentle in nature, but it is clear what's happening. But because people hold it within for so long that by the time they share it, it's like a lion coming at you, and it's like, what was that? Like this feels so overwhelming. And so I think that is the tension people feel, is that by delaying the hard conversation, they do put themselves in this really challenging situation where it does lack humanity. I love like Brene Brown's like classic line, like clear is kind, is I think so true in this, that
Yep.
human-centered leadership is saying, hey, like I care about you enough to tell you the truth and you deserve to know the truth. And part of working with each other is we're going to tell each other the truth. We're going to give each other feedback. We're going to be honest with each other. And that is not less human-centered. I would argue it's actually like more human-centered to do that.
I agree. I think that takes more effort and more investment in your colleagues than not. And I think that's what folks don't understand. If someone's doing that, it's because they're invested in you. And I think that's a positive thing. Mark, from an HR perspective, where do you see otherwise caring cultures unintentionally creating accountability problems? And where do managers tend to need more support in that way?
I think it's where you get into like when you get those really caring environments, when there's a tough situation, it makes it really hard to come in there and to say, all right, now we're going to be really direct. We're going to be very honest, even though we haven't been doing that for 6 to 8 months. We've seen all these things, but we really care about you. We have more of that family mentality, and not more of a team mentality. And what it does is it strains the rest of the team. The rest of the team also sees how that person is getting treated, and if it's too caring, you're not going to hit your goals. Adam says it right. Finding that middle spot where you can have clear conversations, very kind ones, but also say, hey, this is the bar. This is what we're trying to hit. We're trying to get to this goal. This is where everybody is measured on the exact same way. But what's going on? How can I deal with the situation that I'm working with you? Simon Sinek is like it's one of my most favorite quotes in there. I know you've heard it before, but where you come in and say, hey, your numbers are down for the quarter, get them up or you're gone in sales. Or it could be like, hey, your numbers are down, what's going on? What do I need to know? I try to set up a pretty psychologically safe environment for my team that I manage, and that is it's okay to fail. You can fail once and learn versus going after and failing at the exact same thing 10 times. That's two different conversations. We will talk about failure, we'll learn from it, and we'll grow and we'll move on. But it's creating those psychological safety nets that you can avoid ruinous empathy, where you care too much about somebody's feeling that you're avoiding giving them honest, critical feedback that they need to grow.
I think that's so true. I also have this pet peeve about the word family inside businesses. We're not a family. And on top of that, you don't choose your family. You choose your team, which is an active way to be. And so certainly I would want to be chosen. And I always explain that to my team. You were chosen because you have these skill sets, because you have these characteristics, etc. My family, although them, was not chosen. So that is a very different way to look at it as well.
Yeah. And we're building high performing teams, not a high performing family.
Correct. Well,
yeah. I have never run into a company that calls themselves a family that is great at giving direct feedback. Like usually underneath it are really long tenures and decade-long conversations that haven't been had. Just like family. It's like you're like, okay, well, we don't resolve things here. We just kind of smile and deal with what it is. Like there's nothing we can do to solve this.
Well, and with a family, we got to love each other anyway. No, that's not how it works. That's not how. So I agree. I haven't seen that either. So this is for both of you. So what are some signs that a team or managers drifted too far one way or the other? So too far to accountability or too far to the, kumbaya side. What are some signs of that?
I think go ahead, Mark.
No, you go first.
I think too far on the caring side is there are far too many companies where the employee doesn't actually know what they're supposed to be doing. Yeah. And it is shocking how many employees don't know what their base level job is and how to measure success. I've got clients where I run interviews with employees and ask, like, do you have clarity on what's expected of you? More often than not, I hear no. Like of all the times I've ever asked that question, I run interviews every week asking that question. More often than not, no. Do you know how to get to the next promotion path? More often than not, no. And that is skewing too far when you when an employee can't name out loud, like, what are the two most important things I need to accomplish this week? That's a pretty good sign that the performance standards are too low. When they don't know when they missed the bar, performance standards are too low. And probably the worst in the family culture is when people deep down kind of know they're missing, missing goals, but everybody's hoping nobody brings it up. That's like a sign that you're like too far. You've gone like too far down this where we're not taking ownership and we're not showing pride in the level of performance that we're bringing to the company, right? We're kind of sweeping those under the rug. We're not talking about it. And there's this undercurrent of mediocrity is acceptable here.
Right. Well, that makes sense. Mark, anything to add?
I'll see good people leave teams. I'm a firm believer that people stay at the world's worst company if they're on a great team, and they'll leave the world's best company if they're on a bad team. And so I'll look at turnover as a lagging indicator of just saying, all right, well, this is what's happening. We haven't had these, but I'll look and see how one-on-ones are happening, how frequent they are. Adam's right on goal clarity. What are they being measured against? Do they know what they need to have and having that clear context? And typically I'll see it to where a manager is like, I have all these performance issues, but I don't want to address them. And how do I solve this? Can I send a card and be very caring and forget about the accountability portion? And then the other side, what I see is a ton of turnover that comes over because people don't have the trusting relationship in there. And that's the other factor of it. But then you have the people who stayed, but the performance isn't getting there and the goals aren't hitting. And those are the two metrics that I would look at and see.
That makes sense. So the one thing I find really interesting is in most organizations, they don't intentionally try to do either one. They're not intentionally trying to create either extreme. I think the patterns show up in kind of the everyday management and how that behavior is manifested, which is where I want to spend some time in the next section. So let's jump right in. So the conversations that managers avoid is what we're going to talk about now. So for both of you, where do managers most commonly avoid difficult conversations? Where do you see the number one place?
Whew.
There's a
So
lot.
many. Well, if I were to get super practical, just like zooming into some recent, conversations, I would say skills that when a manager has doubts about the employee's ability to solve or fix the issue, a
Mhm.
lot of times rather than being candid about it, they go quiet. So the hardest ones that I hear are things like, this employee is too long-winded, and so I stop talking because I don't know what I'm getting into when I enter into that conversation, so I'm not even going to bring it up anymore. Or they have like some competency issue that is viewed as like, I think this is going to be the reason they don't make it.
Right.
And the irony of that is like, that's the actual conversation to lean into. The like, I have a gut feeling that if this one thing doesn't get fixed, they're not going to make it, is hopefully one of the earliest conversations to say, hey, need to have a real conversation here. Like, I think it is critical that you develop this skill because I think your long-term viability and succeeding in this role is tied to having this skill nailed down. So I think that's one. I think the other one that happens a lot is that there's like a great, like what seems like a great culture fit person on the team that's very well liked and beloved, from a personality perspective, but from a performance perspective, there's something missing. And so I think it seems tempting to avoid that. But the challenge is that great personality fits that aren't performing actually end up down the road, end up causing a lot of issues, because it kind of shows that like, your performance isn't the thing that you're measured by here, but how fun you are, how like, you create a great environment, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I would counter that. I've had that several times in my career where I've had someone that was just an amazing person, but wasn't performing particularly well. The team loved them, and what I found was the team would then adapt to what they were doing or not doing in performance, and then it became something that became a huge problem across the entire team. So I absolutely understand what you're saying there. All
Yeah.
right, go ahead,
I'll
Mark.
add one other thing. There's the opposite side. There's the person who is not liked but performs really well. And that can be also detrimental to a team as well, because then if the modeling behavior is act this way and just brush everybody off and kind of act the jerk or the person who's difficult to work with, but they're performing really, really high, but you're losing all these other people coming through because nobody wants to work with them. And then having that conversation is also a really hard one that I see managers avoiding at times over my years.
And like everybody like listening right now is like, oh yeah, like they have like a name, they named the person in their head.
Yep,
There's like,
they know exactly who that person is.
yeah, I call it like the lone wolf asshole, where it's like, it's just kind of like they are only in the role because they're succeeding, but and the business is nervous to do anything about it. And like that, you're right. That is one that people for sure avoid. And they really avoid it the higher up that person gets inside the company too.
Or the more financial impact they're making on the company. That's
Yep.
also what I've seen many, many, many times. So absolutely. All right. So where do you, this is for you, Adam. So where do you most often see managers confusing care with avoiding difficult conversations?
I see it all the time. I think a manager will say things like, I'm trying to protect the relationship, or I'm trying to protect that person's confidence. And so they try to wait for a better moment.
Mhm.
Like they'll blame a business challenge that feels like, oh, it's just a one-time thing. Like the business is just in a weird moment right now, but once things smooth out, that's when I'll finally address this. Or but the reality is like business is just a series of problems that never stop, and there is never really a better time. And so then by withholding that feedback, while it might feel kind in the moment, it's not. Like you are robbing the person of the information they need to grow.
Right.
And whether or not they can grow isn't your work to do. That's the thing I always say is like, it's not your job. If you have doubts about it, right, that's okay. But your job is to set the bar and give them the information they need. And their job is to raise up and hit the bar.
Right. Right. Very good. All right, Mark, what coaching opportunities do you see HR teams missing when managers avoid performance conversations? And specifically, how do you think AI can help managers feel a little more prepared for those discussions?
Yeah. I think they're missing out on trust building and relationship building on a team. I think it's foundational in how you get things working and how somebody perceives you as a leader or your team member, of how they're perceived, and having those open conversations, or just knowing what's happening on in life. So that you can address and be able to modify work conditions, or just have empathy and understanding what they're going through. It might not be that you can solve that, but at least you have that understanding. But also on the day-to-day stuff, you can address and give positive feedback in real time. If you have one-on-ones that build up relationships quicker, you can say, "I saw you do this last week. I want you to go do that 100 times more. It was perfectly executed. I loved how you did this, this, and this, and this." And it can give that feedback that they want. But at the same time, you could say, "But let's not do this. And here's the why." When you have better conversations with people, you can build up that trusting relationship to where when you do get feedback, they don't think that you're just coming after them. But it's honestly an adult conversation with fully formed functional adults in the room that are having that performance conversation. And I think AI can help with that, whether it be Klaar, the Klaar bot with performance management. It could be Gemini transcripts, and ways to capture data can allow you to be more present, more there with an individual, to where it creates a more authentic one-on-one that has critiques and criticism or perspectives and feedback, but also positive feedback that can come in there. And I think that they're missing out on a lot of that. And AI can help with that, to where you can be more present and more focused, and then have documentation afterwards to help out with one-on-ones and performance management.
Absolutely. We always hear that it makes it more relevant, makes the conversation more relevant, which makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I might add to that too, real quick, Mark, because I think you said two things that really one of them was like the foundation of trust, right? It's like, if you want to be a person that delivers hard feedback and tells people the truth, you have to invest in the relationship to make it safe, right? And so that takes work. But the other thing I heard that you said that I thought was so good is like, spot what's right. That muscle is one of the most underdeveloped muscles of leaders. Every leader is good at seeing what's wrong. And it's so easy to find what's wrong, but to have that inverse, to go, "Hey, I am seeing good. This is the good we want you to lean into." I feel like that's such great practical advice. Like I've got clients, I'm like, write the word, write gratitude down, like on a note on your phone. And anytime you see one of your employees do something that you want to see more of, write it down. And then on Friday, go through that note and send every single one of them a note, because you start to add clarity of like what good looks like too, not just this culture of failure, culture of like, "Oh, you're always missing the mark." No, we're like actually telling people also what the standard of like great looks like here too.
I practice this at home with my family, with my kids. I know we are not talking about family, but I have a 12-year-old, and I'm like, "Hey, I saw you do this the other day. Thank you for getting it done on time." Or, "I really liked how you did this. Keep on doing those type of things," because we all need positive reactions and reinforcements of what we're doing. Otherwise, we're guessing and thinking it's negative because we're always being criticized.
Absolutely. It's a very, very good point. So what does that effective feedback actually sound like in practice? And how important do you guys think that the timeliness versus in this case, waiting for a formal review cycle is? So what's more important, timeliness, waiting? How do you see this?
I'll jump in first. I think it's timeliness. And here's the reason why. We live in a digital world where we get instantaneous feedback within minutes of when we share our ideas, our successes, our failures, anything that's out there on social media. People they get angry, they love, they have caring support emojis and other things. They have feedback that comes through. But at work, sometimes we only do one feedback and it's the annual, and it's at the end of the year, and the manager comes back and goes, "You remember January through March? You did horrible during that time. I'm going to ding you in terms of merits, and you're barely meeting expectations." Person goes, "Well, why didn't you tell me about it?" And I don't know, like I just really think that timeliness is so important, and that everybody should have at least a monthly one-on-one with their manager just to know how things are going, and to build up that trust. But timeliness, absolutely, is so important versus an annual review that captures 12 months, and most of the time it's just recency bias that they look at 3 months.
Well, yeah. What if I made this like controversial and I was like, no, actually, I'm a big fan of surprising people during performance reviews. I think that is the proper. I do what I'm like, who's saying that? Yeah, like here's a grand reveal. We're about to talk about your comp and your performance, and you're about to find out for the first time that you are not doing well.
But it
I
happens
do,
a lot.
oh gosh, it happens like
all the
way too
time.
often.
Yes.
It happens. I think it happens the most in the environment where the manager thinks they have the thing we were talking about earlier, where they think they've given the feedback, but they haven't. Um, I do one like practical way I've done this with people like real time is I'll say things like, "Hey, I've been thinking about ways to help you be more successful in your role, and I think I might be onto something. Can I give you some feedback on that?" Like, so I'm saying I'm starting from the side of like, I'm with you. I want you to be successful. I also have been in this, oftentimes you're in the business longer than somebody else. You've got more visibility. And so I come alongside them, and then I try to get really specific about what the thing is that we're going to be working on with them. But man, yeah, real time. Now, the only exception to real time, or as quick as possible, I will say, is it is never great to give someone feedback when you're frustrated.
Right.
So
Yes.
somewhere between, that quarterly review and the like, this person made me mad and I am not my calm centered self. That moment is a don't do it. And also great use for AI. If you're frustrated and worked up, leverage AI to kind of work through what those things are and what is your actual feedback you're trying to give, and then try to get to something that's like actually productive and healthy. Because that is very common. That's that big swing. You go too far when you're kind of worked up yourself and not in like a healthy place to give people feedback.
And I would add to that also, if the person receiving the feedback is in a mental state that they can't receive that, give it a few minutes, give it some time, maybe give it a day. That won't hurt anything to give somebody some space to think or feel.
Yeah. There's also, don't you think too, like, I've been doing these feedback, like sharing hard things with people, like Klaar has this with how it measures performance, right?
Right.
Or like, that's what my old company did. No one ever hears feedback and is in a great mood afterwards. Like, it is hard. And so I do think if we just kind of acknowledge that, like, don't worry if it doesn't go great in the moment. Let it sit. You're better off, rather than trying to convince them of the feedback you gave, deliver it with kindness and then give them some space. It usually takes, at least for me, even to this day, I hear hard things about myself. It takes me 48 hours before I feel normal again. And when you recognize that that's how it is for your employees too, I think sometimes it allows you to like share it and don't overshare it and don't try to sugarcoat it, but also don't try to like convince them of it. Just share it, give them some space, and then come back to it, because the second time is much easier. Like
Right.
after the kind of pressure cooker has been released, it's much easier to lean in and start having that conversation again.
That's a very good point. All right, so let's hop onto our second poll of the day. And you should see one. Where do your managers struggle most today? Okay, where are your managers struggling most today? Give it a second. Mark, Adam, any thoughts here?
I could see the consistent performance documentation. It depends on which systems that you're using and what forms are there. Is it all verbal? Was it written? Are you in a remote environment? Are you in an on-site environment? And I think that one is absolutely something that a lot of companies would be impacting right now. And then holding the people accountable. I think that's always hard. because nobody likes to have a hard conversation.
Yeah, I was going to add, like, I think with that holding people accountable, managing low performance, like the thing that jumps out to me is that it's less like skill gap for the manager to do this, and it's more like a gap in courage. Like, do I have the willingness to have the hard conversations, to like do the hard part of this job, which is filling people in on where they really are. And I think that does, it takes practice and repetition, and it takes a couple that I'm sure you both are so experienced. Like, I'm sure you also have those moments where you tried and it did not go well.
Of
Like the
course.
first person I let go was a disaster because I held off holding them accountable. I never shared what wasn't working, and it ended up being this 2-hour affair where we end up in a parking lot sitting on like one of those parking things, and they're stunned, you know. And I was like, I'm never doing that again. I'm never going to let somebody get all the way to the end of their tenure without knowing exactly like where I stand and what works for me, you know. But unfortunately, most of us, we have like, you don't just get to hear in a webinar and like you fix it. Like usually it's because you like screwed it up yourself, and then was like, I'm not doing that again.
Right. I feel the same way. My first one was just the opposite. And it was many years ago, unfortunately, but it was, I just was very direct, like 2 minutes in, out, whatever. And then I left there for days feeling this agony of, gosh, did I show enough empathy and humanity in the way that I did that? And the answer was no, I did not. And I've never done that again, but it just ate me alive. And so I understand completely what you're saying. All right. So one thing we've touched on throughout this discussion is that managers' behaviors doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's not something that they are solely responsible for. The expectations, the processes, the systems surrounding the managers often shape how accountability and care show up in their day-to-day. So let's spend our final section talking about the role organizations themselves play in reinforcing the right behaviors. So we're going to jump right into building systems that reinforce the right behaviors. So this is a question for either one of you. How do performance reviews, calibration, and compensation processes sometimes reinforce the wrong behaviors, even when leaders have good intentions?
I've seen it in prior places where I have worked at, where the decisions were not objective. They were totally subjective on, hey, I want to go over this person and this person because I like them. They do this and this, but I don't like this little bit of a personality for this person or whatnot. Sorry about that. In terms, I had my phone ringing. But I found that like personal bias or where they're like, I just don't like that person. Their performance was great, but they end up getting dinged, and it can be toxic, and it can spread through an organization when managers are doing the wrong performance reviews, and they don't have an objective criteria that's really measuring off that. And then you end up losing people, and your good people end up leaving because the wrong behaviors are being reinforced, and then it looks like the good old boy club that comes in with performance reviews.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think the recency bias too of performance, like if making sure that one, as performance reviews get more real time, like Klaar, where it's like we're kind of tracking things constantly, right? But then when we go into the actual review cycle, that we take the full range of time and we really consider that. I feel like that part is really central in like reminding people to be objective too. I mean, taking out some of that emotion. I am blown away by, and I know I've seen all these like people debate like, should compensation be tied to performance reviews? Should it not? I also like, I don't understand a world where we don't tie compensation to how a person is doing. Like
Right.
if what they deliver to the company and the quality of their work isn't what determines their compensation, I hardly understand what does, you know? And so I think that is a system that matters, that we create cultures that show clarity that like, if you perform here, you are rewarded for it, and good things come to you. And just making that part really like clear as well. I also think inside the system, like with calibrations too, like a culture that is psychologically safe where people can push back. A thing beyond the tool is how is the health of this team? And like when we debate, are we able to debate with honesty? Like, can we really
Yes.
challenge each other and push each other? I think helps get to much better quality too.
Right. This compensation you were mentioning conversation comes up a lot. And we have some organizations that say they don't want to tie that to reviews, which I always say, oh, how does that work? But I think what I hear them saying a lot of times is they don't want that to be the only thing that's tied to reviews. They want to make sure there's upward mobility and there's, other things that are valuable outside of compensation. But I would say not having compensation tied to that in any way doesn't make a lot of sense to me either. But I know some people.
Your highest performers will only perform down at the right level. If you do like cost of living adjustments and other things and don't tie it to merit and say, we want to reward people who do really, really great work. We're going to see it. We're going to recognize it. We're going to make sure you see it in your paychecks and other things like that. Otherwise, you take all that out and your star performers, your A players, even your potentials that can move up, they end up leaving because they want to be on those other high performing teams. And they're like, what I'm doing over here, I can just work at the baseline and I'll still get what I have. And then you won't get the acceleration that you need to achieve those business goals that you have as a team. And a well-functioning team that everybody knows where the clear sight is and how they get measured is going to perform really, really well because they have that psychological trust. And they know this is how I'm measured and I'm going to get rewarded based upon my performance.
Right.
Whereas cost of living is very different.
I agree. Well, I also think, the company isn't getting cost of living. The company is making money if they perform. Same thing with the employees inside of the company. So that makes sense that everyone is rowing in the same direction per se. All right, Mark, what are some ways HR teams can make accountability easier? So more consistent, less dependent on individual manager styles. And what role can technology or AI play in helping managers get us there?
I think the very first thing is you have to establish your goals more than a month before the annual review comes through. Put those up at the very first of the year. Reaffirm what you have so that everybody knows what they're being measured on throughout the whole year, and then they all know the same direction of where they're going. If you don't have KPIs or OKRs that you're running in there, at least get 4 or 5 questions in your review and let the team know this is how we're going to measure this year. This is what we're going to do. This is what our one-on-ones are going to be measured against. And with AI, something like Klaar that has the ability to note take and say, hey, here's the performance issues, and that manager who's stretched thin, and has a bunch of people that they're managing, or we're all doing more with less. You want to have ways that you can still engage and make a better human experience at work. Note take, have the ability to have agendas that can be set up, or talking points, or even if it's just the day that you're like, everything's good, how can I get in there and really engage in relationship building and trust building? Like, what are things that I as a manager can do to make your life better? Like, put those lenses in that and use that time for better performance. And then at the end of the year, nothing's a surprise.
Makes sense. Adam, what does a healthy, high care, and high performance culture actually look like day to day? And what reinforces those behaviors over time?
I think day to day, it's pretty concrete. I think every person knows what good looks like in their role. And so feedback feels fair instead of feeling personal. I think that people in that environment feel safe enough to name what's broken, that the managers feel safe enough to say when expectations aren't met. And then even in like the hardest moments, including riffs, they're handled with transparency, they're handled with dignity. And then underneath that, there's just like a team of people that genuinely believe that the company matters in the world and that it deserves to grow. And so they're willing to do the hard work to make it grow. And so I think that is like the day-to-day way to make it work. One of the, I run this idea came from a workshop that I've been doing for years with teams, where I come in and kind of talk through this concept, and then I draw it up on the board, and then we have everybody plot where they are. And that is a really simple exercise. If you're watching, you could bring to your team is just, you draw an arrow up on the board, explain this concept, have people put up on with Post-it notes where both they are and where the company is, and then just have a conversation about it. What are the steps we need to take? Not to move toward the extremes, but what are the steps we need to take to move toward the middle of this as well?
Perfect. Mark, anything to add there?
No, I think Adam said it perfect. Everything that he was saying, I am in full agreement with.
If an organization wanted to strengthen accountability without damaging trust, which is the key, Adam, you mentioned one way, but where would you recommend they start?
Super clear goals.
Super clear
Like
goals.
super clear, clearer than they currently are right now. Whatever they think, and all the way down to each individual. I think clarity first before this kind of consequential accountability concept. Like, let's make sure the bar is crystal clear for everybody first and foremost, and then start building the systems around that.
Yeah, if you have clearly defined goals, it's a whole lot easier and say, this is where we're all going. This is the bus. This is the goal. This is what we're all objectively measured on. And then from there, you can start building up managers, teaching empathy within a workforce, or how to be kind and really listen. I mean, there's books that they're one of my most favorite ways to give it, whether it be audible. And this is kind of a key thing. Understand who you're working with. Some people are verbal, some people are written. Some people like to listen to a book, and some people like to read it. Give them the option, because if you give me a book, I'm probably not going to read it because I don't have time to sit down and actually hold the book, but I can listen to it all day long. And if you adjust to people after you've set those clear goals, I think it makes a world of difference. And then just teaching people, like as you see something coming in the organization and a manager, and be like, you're a new manager. Let me give you some tools to become a better manager. Because most of the time, the only time that somebody's been leading is probably in their house with their family, or a sports team, a local sports team, or a local group. But ways to build up a leader and be able to help them become a better leader. And there's great books out there like Leadership and Self-Deception, Radical Candor. Arbinger Institute has some really good stuff out there. But if you really can lean in and see people, I think that's how you can really build up trust, and having those clear goals can really build psychological safety on a team. And they'll go and be with you for quite a long time if you're a great leader.
Perfect. All right. One last question. Besides clear goals, which we clearly know that is the foundation for all of this, what's one thing that HR leaders can do in the next 30 days to help managers balance care and accountability more effectively and consistently moving forward?
I think one is pick the one conversation that you've been avoiding yourself, that you kind of know it's time, and have that conversation. Like, the first and foremost, like, for this to work inside of a culture, like, you've got to model it yourself. And whether it's big or small, there is one. I know when I say that, someone's like, oh no, I know what it is. And it's probably the one that makes your stomach hurt a little bit, right? And I think starting there, because cultures don't change because we rolled out some grand process or new technology. Like, they change when leaders actually show up in the real world. And so, like, this is a chance for the leader to show up in the real world, lay that foundation, have the conversation. My hope is that you can find that balance of high care, high performance, and realize, like, oh, it didn't make things worse. I feel lighter, they feel lighter. Like, we're making progress. And by modeling it, now we can start to, like, put systems in place around it too.
Makes sense. Mark,
Yeah.
anything?
I would echo, have that one conversation that you might not have been wanting to do for a long time, because it's not going to go away. Like an ember is easier to put out than a bonfire. And if you can have those conversations quicker, and I think another thing as a leader, oftentimes we're afraid to admit fault. Like, there's times where I've messed up as a leader, and I go to my team, I was like, you're right, I'm wrong. I will fix this and I will do this there down the road and make it better for it, because I messed up in my conversation. It's clearly spelled out. And I think sometimes as a leader, you can show that you're also human. That if you say, hey, it's okay to fail at one time, but 10 times is different. But for you as a leader, you get in there and be like, I'm perfect. Like, people will lead teams faster when you are a leader that says, do as I say, not as I do. Follow through on your actions, go through, and it doesn't take anything to be kind and understand the situation that somebody is going through. Or if you can't send flowers and somebody passed away, send a card. It doesn't take much, but really just seeing people and building those relationships is the fastest thing you can do. And if you're avoiding that because you don't want to have the hard conversation as a leader, it's going to be worse in the future, I promise you.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Being more human is really the core of that. All right, folks. So I think it's time to wrap this one up. I want to extend a massive thank you to Mark and to Adam for sharing all their practical knowledge and perspectives today. On behalf of the entire Klaar team, I want to thank you to everyone who attended today. You'll receive a copy of the webinar shortly, and we'll send a recap blog tomorrow. One theme I kept hearing today is that high care and high performance aren't opposing forces. They reinforce each other when managers have the right habits and the right conversations and the right support system behind them. So if you'd like to learn more about Klaar and how we're helping organizations build stronger performance cultures through continuous feedback, better visibility, and more consistent performance practices, feel free to visit us at klaarhq.com. I'd also like to, for anyone who's interested in continuing the conversation, we're currently running our Dog Days of Summer campaign. So book a demo with Klaar today, anytime over the next few weeks, attend the session, and we'll send you a custom watercolor portrait of your favorite furry coworker. And let me tell you, they're super cute. So I happen to have a little rambunctious golden retriever who's adorable in these watercolors. So
you need that in your background right now.
I
Just add it, right?
It's so cute. When they said it, I was like, that's a darling. So anyway, book a demo. We'll be happy to do that for you. Send us a picture of your furry buddy and we'll get that out to you. It's a fun thing to have in your office. Finally, before we go, mark your calendars for our next webinar, which is on July 21st, in partnership with All Voices on the manager behaviors that predict an employee relations case 6 months out. So again, it's all about getting in front of that, and we're going to deep dive into that next time. I will paste the demo link and the July webinar information in the chat. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great rest of your week, and we hope to see you next month.